In the 16th century, famine and poverty swept across Spain, driving many men to seek their fortunes as royal soldiers and explorers. When word spread of the riches in the Indies, they were willing to risk everything for gold and glory. Though ruthless and often divided, they shared a common ambition, setting their sights firmly on the New World. By 1538, in the Indies, a Spanish soldier named Martin killed a tribal warrior who had attacked him. He was part of an expedition commissioned by the King of Spain to search for a legendary city of gold. Among the members was Usama, the royal scribe, tasked with recording the journey and ensuring the treasure would be delivered to the king. Their quest had begun. This is gold. The expedition was led by Gonzalo, an aging veteran appointed by the governor. Authoritative yet often indecisive, he traveled with his young wife, Doña Ana, whose privileged treatment stirred resentment among the men. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Gorriamendi, was a seasoned warrior both respected and feared for his years in the Indies. Many soldiers were survivors of the Italian wars, including Sergeant Lorenzo Bastaurrés, while the group's spiritual needs were overseen by Vargas, a stern preacher quick to condemn any sin. The rest of the company consisted of proud newcomers with strong regional rivalries, yet they stood united when confronted by attacks from Indian tribes, bound by their hunger for glory. During one march, a local guide named Chima warned Mendi of a hostile tribe nearby. Mendi instructed Martin and 3 others to guard the rear, which annoyed Romano, who often felt assigned to that post. Nevertheless, he obeyed. When Ana heard of the rising tension, she urged Gonzalo to intervene, but he dismissed her concerns, insisting she knew nothing of such matters. Soon after, Lorenzo sent Mediano to the far rear, unaware that Indians were already lying in wait. Not long afterward, a soldier noticed Mediano's absence and joked that the tribe had probably killed him. Martin, angered by the remark, warned him never to speak that way about a comrade. The camp fell silent, for such tensions were all too common. Hours later, the expedition reached a river. When a crocodile attacked one of the men, Gonzalo hesitated to cross, ordering others to go first. They refused until Mendi and the veterans stepped forward. Martin followed, and when the crocodile struck again, he killed it with a single shot, clearing the way for the others. Usama recorded the event, and that night the group camped along the riverbank, celebrating a small victory in a journey that still held many challenges ahead. That night, frustration simmered around the campfire as many blamed Gonzalo for bringing Ana. The tension eased briefly when Marchena lifted their spirits with a song.
Los álamos vengo, madre, de ver cómo los menea el aire, de los álamos de ese.
Yet the harmony shattered when Mendi's dog caught a local man named Jaramillo, who had come seeking Gonzalo. Lorenzo nearly killed him before Gonzalo stepped in to stop the attack. Suspicious of Jaramillo's presence, Lorenzo instructed Martin to question La Parda, Ana's servant. Martin, in turn, approached Iturbe, who was close to Ana, and asked him to find out what she might know. By morning, Mendi gave the order to resume the march. Martin attempted to speak with Gonzalo about Jaramillo's visit, but Gonzalo dismissed him and urged the group forward. Only when Lorenzo and Iturbe supported Martin did Gonzalo finally explain.
A los pocos días de salir de Puerto Cristo y de volverme con escolta a Puerto Cristo.
Si donde Medrano nos alcanza, tendremos que repartir el oro con los hombres que le acompañan.
Habrá que tomar una decisión.
Shortly after they had departed earlier, a royal envoy had arrived with troubling news. A new expedition under Medrano was following them. The king wanted the gold for himself and intended to have Gonzalo's party eliminated. Recognizing the danger, Mendi proposed splitting the force. One group would remain to face Medrano in service of the king, while the other would continue with Gonzalo, defying royal orders. In the end, not a single man chose to stay behind. Even Vargas sided with Gonzalo, convinced that spreading the faith outweighed loyalty to the crown. Before they set out again, Martin suggested they write in the royal log that they intended to grant the king a larger share of the gold, as a show of loyalty. The proposal met with unanimous agreement, and Usama assured them it would be recorded. Days later, tensions flared when soldiers quarreled over captured women from a local tribe. Without warning, Gonzalo ordered the women released. One soldier, enraged, raised his weapon. Mendi moved to intervene, but Lorenzo defused the situation. The effort was wasted, for Gonzalo declared the man a traitor and ordered his execution, instructing Usama to record it as such, erasing the soldier's years of service. Ana stood by silently, realizing that Gonzalo was losing what little respect he still commanded. That night, as La Parda bathed her, Ana noticed Martin lingering outside her tent. She had felt a quiet attraction to him since the journey began, sensing that his gaze carried something different from the others. La Parda cautioned her to abandon such thoughts, reminding her that a noblewoman could never be with a common soldier. The next day, Gonzalo's group was resting in a swamp when the sharp crack of distant gunfire broke the stillness. Mendi immediately dispatched scouts and sent his dog to investigate. Before long, they returned with a prisoner from Medrano's party. Gonzalo demanded to know Medrano's location, but the prisoner remained silent until a soldier coaxed him into speaking. He finally admitted that Medrano was only a day's march away. Without asking another question, Gonzalo abruptly killed him. The sudden act left Mendi, Lorenzo, and several others quietly questioning his judgment. Concerned about what lay ahead, Mendi and Lorenzo sought advice from Chima. Chima believed Medrano would likely position himself on higher ground to ambush them. His suggestion was to make it appear they were taking that route, then change course midway. However, this would force them into Indian territory, a risk they could not ignore. The group pressed on through the dense forest until an arrow struck the ground before them.
No!
Mendi raised his weapon to return fire, but Chima stopped him, explaining that it was only a warning. The tribes feared their guns and would keep their distance if not provoked. Mendi ordered the men to advance slowly and only fire if attacked. Gonzalo bristled at Mendi's decision to give orders without his approval, yet he reluctantly agreed, warning him never to do it again. Meanwhile, La Parda noticed Gonzalo's authority slipping and worried that the men might turn against him. She advised Ana to find someone capable of protecting her. Ana replied that she already had a plan and would need La Parda's help. Hours later, Ana sat in her tent when Martin arrived, sent by La Parda. She thanked him for his help during the journey, and their conversation turned to his home and his dream of traveling the world. The attraction between them was unmistakable, but before it could be spoken aloud, Mendi appeared and summoned Ana to Gonzalo. Once she was gone, Mendi confronted Martin, warning him to stay away from Gonzalo's wife. Lorenzo quietly added his own caution, reminding Martin that Ana was a noblewoman and that Mendi himself wanted her badly enough to kill for her. That afternoon, La Parda was speaking with Iturbe when a venomous snake struck her. Iturbe rushed to tell Ana, who immediately went to her side. Realizing she would not survive, La Parda made Ana promise to see that she was properly buried. After her death, Ana begged Gonzalo to honor that wish. He agreed, but Romero objected, citing their rule against burying the dead. Gonzalo responded with a slap, and when Romero reached for his sword, Lorenzo struck first, wounding him. Gonzalo called Romero a traitor and ordered Marchena to execute him. Mendi stepped in, ensuring Romero received a soldier's death instead. When it was over, Vargas mocked Romero as a traitor. Barbate moved to attack, but Martin stopped him. Vargas then accused Martin of seducing another man's wife. Before tempers could erupt further, Lorenzo intervened and ordered Vargas to pray for the dead. Later, as they moved through the forest, Martin and Barbate vowed to kill Vargas. Lorenzo cautioned them that killing a man of the church would bring an entirely different kind of trouble. A few days later, the expedition pressed on, yet Gonzalo's authority was slipping away. Many believed he relied too heavily on Ana's counsel, and whispers of discontent grew louder. During a brief rest, Mendi quietly confided in Martin that he intended to overthrow Gonzalo by killing him. He warned Martin to stay clear if he valued his life. Lorenzo, speaking in hushed tones, admitted he was against the plan. Before they could say more, Chima reported hearing Jaramillo's voice nearby. Jaramillo had just returned from spying on Medrano's force. He explained that he and two others had tricked the enemy, buying the expedition a few more days, though the other two had been killed by Indians. They now had only a short window before Medrano discovered the truth. Mendi ordered Lorenzo to set up camp and sent Martin to patrol with Chima. As they moved through the forest, Chima told Martin that Lorenzo had arranged the patrol to keep him away from camp, believing it had become too dangerous for him there. Meanwhile, Gonzalo, aware of the resentment building against him, armed himself and left Ana's side. Outside, Mendi and his followers surrounded him. The confrontation was brief. Gonzalo was killed quickly. Hearing the commotion, Ana rushed out and found Gonzalo's lifeless body. She seized his sword, but Mendi stopped her, then killed the soldier who had delivered the fatal blow. Pretending to avenge Gonzalo, he concealed his own part in the murder, using the act to gain Ana's trust. He escorted her back to her tent and ordered that Gonzalo be buried. Lorenzo volunteered to oversee the burial, honoring the time they had served together. Inside the tent, Mendi attempted a gentle approach toward Ana, but when she resisted, his temper flared, and he forced himself upon her. Days later, Mendi assumed command of the expedition. Their march halted briefly when his dog was killed by an Indian scout. During the rest, Lorenzo warned Martin to keep his distance from Ana, saying she now belonged to Mendi. Soon after, a soldier sent by Ana delivered a message asking Martin to meet her. That night, Martin went to her tent. They embraced and agreed it would be their only night together. Their moment was cut short when the soldier signaled Mendy's approach. Martin slipped away just in time. Mendy entered, suspicious, but found nothing. Later, Mendy prowled the camp until Martin returned from the forest. Confronting him, he issued a final warning. If Martin saw Ana again, he would not survive. The following day, the soldiers rescued a woman from a nearby tribe. She was immediately drawn to the cross around Vargas's neck. Vargas claimed her under his protection, reminding the men that their mission was to spread the faith as well as seek gold. Curious, Chima asked how she recognized the necklace. She explained that she had seen one like it in her village. This revelation led Lorenzo to suspect that someone from their first Indies expedition might still be alive. Mendy dismissed the idea, insisting that only one man had ever returned, but Martin urged that they visit the village to investigate. A few hours later, Mendy's group reached what appeared to be an abandoned village. When Martin fired his weapon into the air, a man speaking Spanish emerged and introduced himself as Manuel. He was a survivor from the first Indies expedition, now living there with his wife and child. Manuel led them to the grave of his former leader and later produced a map of the region. Recognizing Lorenzo from a battle years earlier, he handed him a royal emblem he had kept, asking that it be returned to the kingdom.
¿Cómo llamáis?
Bastaurrés. Sargento Bastaurrés.
Este es el pendón real que usted hará mejor uso de él.
While the soldiers rested, Martin asked why Manuel had never gone back to Spain. Manuel explained that he was too old, had a family here, and believed the spirits of his fallen comrades still haunted the surrounding forest. As they spoke, a parrot flew into the house. Manuel remarked that parrots usually avoided soldiers, as they associated them with destruction. Their stay was not without conflict. Vargas discovered that Manuel had not been spreading Christianity, and deeming this a grave sin, assaulted the woman who had been drawn to his cross. Martin and Barbate intervened, beating Vargas until Lorenzo stepped in, reminding them that Vargas still represented the church and had to be treated accordingly. The next day, they departed the village. Manuel prayed for their safe return. On the trail, Martin noticed strange markings carved into a tree and a parrot flying away behind them. The realization struck him. Jaramillo, who had claimed to be spying on Medrano, was in fact guiding the enemy to their position. Without hesitation, Martin killed him. The others were shocked, but their disbelief faded when black smoke rose from the direction of Manuel's village, confirming the betrayal. Martin quickly devised a plan to deal with Medrano but required Ana's help. Mendy resisted at first, but Martin argued that the presence of a woman might cause the enemy to lower their guard. When Mendy asked Ana directly, she agreed, on the condition that she be given a weapon. Not long after, Martin, Ana, and a small group prayed with Vargas as Medrano's men approached. Martin told them that only their small party had survived Gonzalo's expedition. Medrano ordered the men killed and declared that Ana would be his. In an instant, Martin attacked him. Soldiers hidden in the surrounding forest charged forward, and Medrano's force collapsed under the ambush. When the battle ended, Mendy captured several survivors and wanted them executed for not being part of their expedition. Martin argued they had only been following orders and could strengthen their numbers. Lorenzo agreed, and the prisoners were offered the choice to join them. Usama recorded the names of the new recruits. Lorenzo prepared to finish the wounded Medrano, but Ana stepped forward and delivered the killing blow herself, repaying him for his earlier insult. Days later, the expedition reached a land marked by human bones, a grim warning that they had entered the territory of a cannibal tribe. With valuable time lost after the recent battle, Mendy chose to press directly through the forest. He sent a heavily armed scouting team ahead, and Lorenzo warned them to avoid capture at any cost. Minutes after they vanished into the trees, the sound of distant gunfire signaled their deaths. Despite the danger, Mendy led his men into the forest to search for them. Chima sensed they were being watched, and moments later, an arrow struck one of the soldiers, forcing the group to take cover among the trees. In the heavy silence, Martin asked Marchena to sing. His voice rose through the still air, soon joined by the soldiers and even Ana. The sound carried across the field, and the watching tribe slowly withdrew. When Mendy asked Chima why, Chima explained that the Indians had likely gone to hide their women and children after seeing the soldiers prepared for battle. Before long, Mendy's group reached the village, but it stood eerily empty. Without warning, The gate slammed shut and a rain of arrows fell, killing several soldiers. Mendi quickly ordered a defensive formation. As they realized the enemy was surrounding them, Mendi readied every firearm. A section of the wall shifted, and he gave the order to fire. The battle raged until their gunfire blasted a gap in the defenses. Mendi seized the moment, commanding a full charge. The wall gave way under the assault, and the soldiers stormed inside, overwhelming and destroying the tribe. In one of the houses, they discovered the bodies of the missing scouts. Enraged, Mendi demanded that the women and children be captured. By morning, they had been gathered. As Mendi prepared to execute them, Martin stepped forward with his sword, joined by Barbate, Iturbe, and Chima. The standoff turned deadly when one of Mendi's men killed Chima on the spot. Lorenzo, furious, struck the man down. Mendi ended the matter there, and the group left the village behind. Days later, Marchena spotted Vargas sinking into quicksand. The soldiers, still bitter toward him, refused to help and watched as he sank from sight. While the group rested, Lorenzo quietly warned Martin to watch himself, certain that Mendi intended to claim the gold by killing the others. Soon after, Mendi sent Martin and Barbate ahead to scout. Once they were gone, he and his men turned on Usama and began slaughtering the rest. Lorenzo moved to resist just as Martin returned and opened fire. Chaos exploded through the camp as the battle began. In the midst of the fighting, Ana tried to help Martin but was attacked. Iturbe rushed in to defend her and found himself facing Mendi. Martin fought his way to Mendi, and the two exchanged heavy blows. As Martin began to weaken, Ana crawled to a knife and drove it into Mendi's side. The opening allowed Lorenzo and Barbate to strike, knocking Mendi unconscious. When the fighting ended, Martin stayed beside Ana as she lay dying. She was buried nearby. That afternoon, Lorenzo and the others agreed that Mendi must die for his betrayal. Martin, now keeper of Usama's record, wrote down their decision. Mendi confessed to everything but asked to die as a soldier. Lorenzo granted the request and executed him. The survivors pressed on. With Iturbe dead and Usama choosing to remain behind, only 4 men reached the river. Before they crossed, Usama entrusted Martin with the task of completing the expedition's written account. Days later, while standing watch, Martin spotted 2 Indian tribes locked in battle. He hurried back to alert the others, but before he could reach them, an arrow struck Marchena, forcing a cry from his lips. Barbate clamped a hand over his mouth to keep their position concealed, then, with no other choice, ended his life to prevent discovery. A second arrow found Lorenzo, who made no sound and calmly broke the shaft. Once the tribes moved on, Martin and Barbate tried to carry Lorenzo, but his wound was too severe. Knowing he would not survive, Lorenzo handed Martin the royal emblem Manuel had entrusted to him, asking that it be returned to the kingdom. He also urged Martin to give the gold they had found to the king, hoping it might earn them a pardon. Hours later, Barbate and Martin reached the crest of a hill. Far below, sunlight glinted off something in the valley. Their hearts quickened as they realized they were looking at the city they had been searching for all along. When they finally arrived at the coastal settlement, Barbate climbed onto a rooftop and pried away several golden tiles, only to find they were nothing more than hardened, sun-baked mud. The truth hit them hard. Everything they had endured, from the treacherous jungle and the battles with local tribes to the deadly betrayals among their own men, had all been for nothing. Martin recorded the bitter truth in his journal. Then, he and Barbate stood together on the shore, staring out at the endless ocean. Barbate told him that the locals spoke of a land far across the sea called China, a paradise rich with silk and pearls. Martin declared it all the property of the Spanish crown. Wading into the surf, he planted a staff bearing the royal flag, claiming the beach and the ocean beyond in Spain's name. With the wind carrying his voice over the waves, Martin announced the discovery as his own. The end. So the moral of the story is, if you are going to risk life, limb and sanity chasing gold, at least make sure it is not just sun-baked mud.